Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to section 2, lesson 3. In section 2, we've been covering diacritical marks, and in today's lesson, which is lesson 3, we're going to be covering the Alif Sagheera, the Yaa Sagheera, and the Waaw Sagheera. So let's get started. On the agenda today, we're going to do a quick review of the previous lesson, which was Tanween. I'm going to ask you to do your warm-ups as usual. Please don't skip those. Then I'm going to go into the meat of the lesson, which is going to be the Sagheera letters, which is Alif Sagheera, Waaw Sagheera, Ya Sagheera. We're going to give you keep going over how to spell in Arabic, and I will give you all the exercises related to Arabic, how to spell things out in Arabic so that you can start to read the Quran on your own. And finally, I'm going to go into some detail about the self-test for this lesson, because the self-test for this lesson is going to cover a lot. It's like an aggregate self-test. I'm going to be combining like maybe 4 or 5 skills into a single self-test. So I'm going to go give you a little bit of overview of that as part of the exercise of this lesson. So that's the agenda for today. So let's get started. Okay, review of the previous lesson. What did we learn last time? We learned all about tanween and what tanween means. Tanween means to make noon or add nunation to a sound. So basically we learned before tanween, we learned the fatha, damma, and the kasra. And we learned that when you add a plural fatha, fathatan, or a plural damma, dammatan, or plural kasra, kasratan, 2 of them, then it becomes an N sound at the end. So, for example, the first tanween that we learned was the tanween al-fath or fathatan, which were 2 fathas that were on top, but typically on most tanween al-fath, whenever a letter has 2 fathas on top of it, it must be followed by an alif, except when that letter is either a ta marbuta or a hamza. If that's the case, then the letter does not have to be followed by an alif. But otherwise, all other letters, when they are when they have tanween al-fath or fathatan on them, they must be followed by an alif. And whenever you added tanween al-fath, the sound became an. When the next tanween that we learned was the tanween al-dhamm or dhammatan, and those were the 2 dhammas on top of a letter. And whenever we added those, the sound became un. And the next tanween that we learned, the third type of tanween, and which covered all the 3 tanween, was the kasratan or tanween al-kasr, in which case there were 2 kasras below the letter, and when the kasras were below the letter, the sound became in. And I will go over a little bit more detail now. So this is what we covered last time, but in this quick review, I'm going to go a little bit fast. So we have the letter name in the first column, and the dhammatan, the kasratan, and the fathatan column, and what the sounds like. So I'm going to go over those quickly one by one. So number 1 is hamza fathatan an, hamza kasratan in, hamza dhammatan un, an in un, با فتحتان بن، با كسرتان بن، با ضمتان بن، بن بن بن، تا فتحتان تن، تا كسرتان تن، تا ضمتان تن، تن تن تن، ثا فتحتان ثن، ثا كسرتان ثن، ثا ضمتان ثن، ثن ثن ثن. جيم فتحتان جن، جيم كسرتان جن، جيم ضمتان جن، جن جن جن. حا فتحتان حن، حا كسرتان حن، حا ضمتان حن، حن حن حن. خا فتحتان خن، خا كسرتان خن، خا ضمتان خن، خن خن خن. دال فتحتان دن، دال كسرتان دن، دال ضمتان دن، دن دن دن. ذال فتحتان ذن، ذال كسرتان ذن، ذال ضمتان ذن، ذن ذن ذن. را فتحتان رن، را كسرتان رن، را ضمتان رن، رن رن رن. ذا فتحتان زن، ذا كسرتان زن، ذا ضمتان زن، زن زن زن، سين فتحتان سن، سين كسرتان سن، سين ضمتان سن، سن سن سن، شين فتحتان شن، شين كسرتان شن، شين ضمتان شن، شن شن شن، صاد فتحتان صن، صاد كسرتان صن، صاد ضمتان صن، صن صن صن، ضاد فتحتان ضن، ضاد كسرتان ضن، ضاد ضمتان ضن، ضن ضن ضن، ضا فتحتان طن، ضا كسرتان طن، ضا ضمتان طن، طن طن طن، ضاد فتحتان ظن، ضاد كسرتان ظن، ضاد ضمتان ظن، ظن ظن ظن، عين فتحتان عن، عين كسرتان عين، عين ضمتان عن، عن عن عن، غين فتحتان غن، غين كسرتان غن، غين ضمتان غن، غن غن غن، فا فتحتان فن، فا كسرتان فن، فا ضمتان فن، فن فن فن، قاف فتحتان قن، قاف كسرتان قن، قاف ضمتان قن، قن قن قن، كاف فتحتان كن، كاف كسرتان كن، كاف ضمتان كن، كن كن كن، لام فتحتان لن، لام كسرتان لن، لام ضمتان لن، لن لن لن، ميم فتحتان من، ميم كسرتان من، ميم ضمتان من من، نون فتحتان نن، نون كسرتان نن، نون ضمتان نن، نن نن نن، ها فتحتان هن، ها كسرتان هن، ها ضمتان هن، هن هن هن، واو فتحتان ون، واو كسرتان ون، واو ضمتان ون، ون ون ون، يا فتحتان ين، يا كسرتان ين، يا ضمتان ين، ين ين ين. I hope you remember that from the last time. And just like I recommended previously, do this on your own. Download the PowerPoint, and just like I did, say nun fathatan nan, nun kasratan nin, nun dhammatan nun, and then say nan nin nun, and then repeat that for all the letters so that you start to get the sound down and you start to know how to spell these. Okay, moving on. As usual, go watch the warm-ups video. I'll enter a link for the warm-ups video as part of this video. Please don't skip. Those are important. And wherever possible, I will be referencing the warm-ups in my videos. And those warm-ups are important. They will warm up your vocal cords, your nasal passage, your throat, your chest, your mouth, your lips, your tongue, everything, to make sure that you are starting to use those parts of your body to recite the Quran, inshallah. Okay. For today's lesson, the Sagheera letters. In Arabic, the word Sagheera means small. So there are, as we learned in the previous lessons, there are three long vowels. What were the three long vowels? The three long vowels were the Alif, the Waaw, and the Ya. But there are these three long vowels have small script equivalents. The Alif Sagheera, which looks like a tiny Alif, the Waaw Sagheera, which looks like a tiny Waaw, and a Ya Sagheera, which looks like a tiny Ya. And these small versions that are written in small script, they denote pronunciation. So if you find a little Waaw Sagheera or a Ya Sagheera or a Alif Sagheera, it lets you know that you're supposed to pronounce it like a Waaw or an Alif or a Ya, basically with two movements. That's what it denotes. But when the Arabic is written without diacritics, then these are not written. So the classic example is the name Dawood. Now, if in the Quran, when you're reading the name Dawood, it usually contains, pretty much, usually always contains the Waaw Sagheera. But when the word Dawood is written every day, colloquial Arabic in an Arabic newspaper or something, it's the Waaw Sagheera is not written. It's just assumed that it's for a native speaker of Arabic. They will know that it's pronounced Dawood, not Dawood. Dawood, not Dawood. So these Sagheera letters are really for the benefit of the non-Arabic speakers, to let them know that whenever you see this tiny small script equivalent of the three vowels, the alif, wa, and the ya, then these long vowel, the small script equivalent of these long vowels, you're supposed to make the sound equivalent to two movements. So that's what the Sagheera letters are. Okay, first we have the Alif Sagheera. Alif Sagheera is a small alif after a letter with a fatha on it. And basically it usually occurs or always occurs after a letter with a fatha on it. And this letter, the letter with the fatha, it is to be pronounced, because of the inclusion of the Alif Sagheera, it is to be pronounced equivalent to two movements. So if you had just the fatha, you would say just one movement. But because you see the Alif Sagheera, you have to pronounce that letter equivalent to two movements. So in the example that you see on your screen below, the word is ذَلِكَ. Now, this word, this little diacritic, this little alif right here, the one that my mouse is pointing to right now, the one that my mouse is hovering over, you have not seen before. And the reason you have not seen before is because this is the Alif Sagheera, sometimes called Alif Qasira, sometimes called Alif Khanjariya, Dagger Alif, etc. It has different names, but typically it's usually referred to as an Alif Sagheera. So an Alif Sagheera, when it's written like this, if this Alif Sagheera wasn't there, you would pronounce this Dhal Fatha, with a single movement. You would say Dha. But because this is Dhal Fatha and an Alif Sagheera, you have to extend it to two movements. So you're going to say it like this: Dhal Fatha Alif Sagheera Dha, Lam Kasra Li, Dhali, Kaf Fatha Ka, Dhalika. So this Dha you have to extend to two movements. Excuse me. So this Dhal you have to extend to two movements, and the rest of the letter are as usual, Lam Kasra Li, Kaf Fatha Ka, but this Dhal has to be extended to two movements. Okay. Next we have the Waaw Sagheera. The Waaw Sagheera is a small wow after a letter with a damma on it. And whenever you see this Waaw Sagheera, the letter with the damma on it has to be pronounced equivalent to two movements. Now remember, when we discussed the damma, what did we say? That whenever a letter has a damma on it, you have to pronounce it equivalent to one movement. But the addition of the Waaw Sagheera makes the letter extend to two movements. So in the example that you see below, we have a big wow with a damma on top of it. Wow, damma. And then this tiny little wow that you see right here, this small vowel, wow, this is the Waaw Sagheera. Waaw Sagheera. And so this is how this is going to be pronounced. If this wow wasn't there, this would just be woo. Wow, damma, woo. But because of the addition of this Waaw Sagheera, it lets you know that you have to pronounce it with two movements. So this is how you would spell it out. Waaw, damma, Waaw Sagheera, woo. Ra kasrari, woori. Ya fathaya, wooriya. If this Waaw Sagheera wasn't there, it would be wooriya. But because this Waaw Sagheera is there, you have to pronounce it and you have to extend this Waaw Damma to two movements. So you have to say it like this: wooriya, wooriya. So that is a Waaw Sagheera. So a Waaw Sagheera. Now, this is a wow, a big wow. It has a damma on top of it. But this tiny little wow next to this wow, the original wow, is a Waaw Sagheera. It's this tiny, small wow. Okay, moving on. The Yaa Sagheera. The Yaa Sagheera is a small letter, and it's written after a kasra below it. So whenever a letter or whenever the Yaa Sagheera is written, it's written after a kasra below it. So, and just like before, whenever you see the Yaa Sagheera, the letter before it has to be pronounced equivalent to two movements. So in this case, we have the example of bihi. Now, this is ba kasra. So this is how you would pronounce this word. You would say ba kasra bi, ha kasra ya saghira hi, bihi. So this ha and its e, its kasra vowel, you have to extend it to two movements because of this ya saghira. This little tiny ya that you see over here, this little tiny ya is known as the ya saghira. So you would pronounce it like this. Ba kasra bi, ha kasra ya saghira hi, bihi. So that is a ya saghira. Okay. In order to master this, I'm recommending 3 exercises for you. One of the exercises I'm just going to do as part of this video. The reason I'm going to do that, I'll probably upload it as a separate video as well, but it's important to do in this video is because I want you to get a feel of how to extend the letters with the Waaw Sagheera, the Yaa Sagheera, and the Alif Sagheera. So I'm going to make it part of this video. The other exercise that I want you to do is that I want you to open the Quran, I want you to open the Mus'haf and find the Sagheera vowels in the Quran. See if you can find the 3 marks that I showed you in the previous slides. See if you can find those Sagheera letters in the Quran and try to use what you've learned so far in the lessons that I have taught you to read some of the words that are in the Quran. And don't be afraid. Skip those words that you don't know. There might be diacritical marks that you just don't know what they are. And if that's the case, and if you don't, you see words with diacritics that you don't understand yet, you can skip those. It's okay. But I want you to try to read the Quran. I want you to try to open the book. Inshallah, it'll be very beneficial. And the third exercise, I'm gonna create an exercise video for the previous exercise as well. But the third exercise that I want you to do, it has helped me tremendously. What I used to do is whenever I was, and I still do it a lot actually, is that whenever I was listening to my favorite reciter, usually it's Mishari, but whenever I was listening to my favorite reciter, I would hear a word. I would hear a word and I would say, you know what? If I were to hear that word, I would deconstruct it in my mind. I'd say, you know what? He just said qari'ah, okay? I bet, or al-qari'ah. He said al-qari'ah. I bet it's hamza with a fatha and then lam sukoon and qaf and then alif and ra kasra and ayn and the ta marbuta. That's probably what this word will look like. So I would try to think of what the word will look like, or the word would, just based on the sound. So I'm going to show you how you can, this is an exercise that you will not be proficient at to start with. Based on what you read or what you hear from your reciter, your favorite reciter, it could be anybody. But based on what you hear, I want you to try to deconstruct in your mind simple words based on the sound alone. So if somebody says abada, can you try to deconstruct what that sound is and what the 3 letters are and what the movements are and what the diacritics are for that particular letter? Can you try to imagine what it looks like or visualize what it looks like in your head? And see if you can find that word in the Quran. So for example, if I was listening to the 30th juz or some surah in the Quran that I knew, and I heard a word, and I said, you know what, he just said abada. I bet it's a hamza fatha, a ba fatha, and a dal with a fatha on it. When I open the Quran, I find that word and I said, oh, okay, you know what? it was a hamza fatha, a ba fatha, but actually it was dal fathatan, but he stopped. And because he stopped, he said abada, not abadan. Oh, okay. So that's a rule I didn't know before. So that's something I should probably talk about. So that's going to come later. Don't worry about that. But this exercise, like trying to deconstruct words, what they look like on what the letters are, and what the movements or diacritics are, based on the sound alone, has helped me tremendously. Now, this isn't going to be on the test. I'll create a separate video of how this exercise has helped me. But I'm not going to put this on any test. But I'll tell you it has helped me a lot. So I hope you can try to do this exercise on your own. I'm not going to put this on any test. I'm not going to put this as part of a self-test. Don't worry. But this has helped me. I hope it will help you, and I'll show you how to do that particular exercise in a different video as well. So let's try to do the Qaida Noorania Lesson 7 exercise as part of this video. Okay. And in this, I'm just going to see if I can zoom in a lot more here. There we go. I'm going to say the letters. I'm going to say the movement marks, the diacritic, the movements, the fatha, and then I'm going to say the Sagheera vowel on top of it, and we will go from there. Okay? So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ba fatha alif Sagheera ba. Ya fatha alif Sagheera ya. Ra fatha alif Sagheera ra. Mim fatha alif Sagheera ma. Lam fatha alif Sagheera la. Waaw fatha alif Sagheera wa. Noon fatha alif Sagheera na. Hamza fatha alif Sagheera a. Okay. Before we go any further, I want you to also remember in the previous few exercises, I had been reminding you of the 6 throat letters and that you should memorize those. And I keep repeating them over and over, and I'll repeat them again right now. Hamza ha, ain ha, ghain kha. The 6 throat letters. Whoops. The 6 throat letters. Hamza ha, ain ha, and ghain kha. Hamza ha, ain ha, ghain kha. But I want you to also remember the next another set of letters that I'm going to tell you right now, which is Ya, Ra, Mim, Lam, Waaw, Noon. This is the first introduction. If you don't memorize them immediately, don't worry. But Ya, Ra, Mim, Lam, Waaw, Noon. This is a collection of letters that are called idgham letters. And don't worry if you don't know what that means. We'll worry about that later. But just like I want you to memorize the throat letters, I want you to memorize these letters as well. Ya, Ra, Mim, Lam, Waaw, Noon. Yarmaloon is the mnemonic that'll help you remember this. Ya, Ra, Mim, Lam, Waaw, Noon. Yarmaloon. Ya, Ra, Mim, Lam, Waaw, Noon. The reason I want you to remember these is because these are the letters of idgham. And when we go into idgham later, it's going to be an advanced lesson. It's going to be a lot later. We will cover this in more detail. But just like I wanted you to remember Hamza ha, ain ha, ghain kha, I want you to try to remember Ya, Ra, Mim, Lam, Waaw, Noon, or Yarmaloon. And inshallah, I will keep repeating this one over and over again. I hope you have the 6 throat letters memorized by now. Inshallah, I hope in the future you will have the idgham letters memorized as well. So I stopped at Hamza. I'm going to move on. Ha fatha alif Sagheera ha. Ain fatha alif Sagheera a. Ha, excuse me. Ha fatha alif Sagheera ha. Ghain fatha alif Sagheera gha. Kha fatha alif Sagheera kha. Ta fatha alif Sagheera ta. Tha fatha alif Sagheera tha. جيم فتحة ألف صغيرة جا. دال فتحة ألف صغيرة دا. ذال فتحة ألف صغيرة ذا. زا فتحة ألف صغيرة زا. سين فتحة ألف صغيرة سا. شين فتحة ألف صغيرة شا. صاد فتحة ألف صغيرة صا. ضاد فتحة ألف صغيرة ضا. ضا فتحة ألف صغيرة ضا. ضا فتحة ألف صغيرة ضا. فا فتحة ألف صغيرة ثا. قاف فتحة ألف صغيرة قا. كاف فتحة ألف صغيرة كا. Next we have the Ya Sagheera, which is Hamza kasra Ya Sagheera I. Ha kasra Ya Sagheera Hi. Wow, and oh, by the way, just like because it's a kasra, you have to say I, but because of the Ya Sagheera, you have to extend it to two movements. So Hamza kasra Ya Sagheera I. Just like we were extending the fatha to two movements because of the Alif Sagheera, Ba fatha Alif Sagheera Ba. In this case, because it's a kasra and a ya Sagheera after it, we have to extend it to two movements. So Hamza kasra Ya Sagheera I. Ha kasra Ya Sagheera Hi. Okay, that's the Hamza Sagheera Ya, Hamza kasra Ya Sagheera, and the Ha kasra Ya Sagheera. So the Ya Sagheera extends the kasra sound to equivalent to 2. And the next we have the Waaw Sagheera. So next we have Waaw damma Waaw Sagheera Woo. So because of this Waaw Sagheera, we're going to extend this damma to equivalent to 2 movements. So we're going to say Waaw damma Waaw Sagheera Woo. Ha damma Waaw Sagheera Hu. Hamza damma Waaw Sagheera U. So this Hamza with the damma and the Waaw Sagheera, this damma, if there was no Waaw Sagheera, it would be Hamza damma U. But because of this Waaw Sagheera, we have to extend it to 2 movements. So we have to say Hamza damma Waaw Sagheera U. So that's a quick exercise on how to do the and this is the Qaida Noorania exercise. I will upload it as part of this video later on. I will upload these exercise pages as part of this video. Inshallah, you can refer to those on your own. Okay. Moving on. Okay, we already did this. I'm going to skip this slide. Okay. The self-test. Now, what have we learned so far? I've given you a bunch of videos, some lengthy, some short. But what have we learned so far? We have learned all the letters, what they sound like, what their pronunciation is, and all of their formats. So their initial, medial, and final formats and how to recognize them. We've learned all of that. And if not, you can refer to my previous videos. Section 1 and lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of those will cover those. In section 2, we started with the diacritics, so we covered the movements, which were the fatha, the damma, and the kasra. In the previous lesson, right before this one, I gave you an introduction and I showed you tanween, and I have given you in multiple lessons instructions on how you can start spelling things out in the Quran. We even did that today in the previous lesson. In this lesson, in the previous slide, we did a little bit of spelling. And in this lesson, I've showed you the Sagheera vowels, all 3 Sagheera vowels, which were the Alif Sagheera, the Waaw Sagheera, and the Ya Sagheera. And the self-test for this video, for this lesson self-test, it will combine all of these. And what I mean by that is you will be expected, and there will be words on the self-test that will combine all of these. You will be you will be required to read the letters in all formats and their pronunciation, the movements, the tanween, how to spell them, and to recognize the Sagheera vowels, and how to combine to make the words correctly. And all of this will be on the self-test. So I'll give you a quick, an overview of what the self-test, the major portion of the self-test, what it will be like, a quick practice, if you will. So if you remember from the previous lessons, we had been learning about how to spell things out, right? We had been learning about how, these words are a little bit grainy. The bottom ones look pretty good. When I was writing them, I didn't think it looked that grainy, but they look a little bit too grainy. But trust me, I checked the the printed version of the self-test, it looked pretty good. So in this one, for example, the first word, just like we did in this exercise, we're going to, and we did in the previous exercise and the previous lessons as well, we are going to start to deconstruct the words and we're going to start to spell them out. So the first syllable, just like we were doing in the previous spelling lessons, we first pronounce the first syllable, we then pronounce the second syllable, we combine the first with the second, and then the first, the second, and then we pronounce the third one, and then we combine all three to make the word. So in this case, the first syllable is ذا الفتحة ألف صغيرة ذا لام كسرة لي. That's the second one. And ذالي. And the third one is كاف فتحة كا ذلك. So one more time, the first syllable is ذا الفتحة ألف صغيرة ذا. The second syllable is لام كسرة لي. Now we combine the two. ذالي. The third syllable is كاف فتحة كا. Now we combine all three. ذلك. And that's how you spell. And if you want, you can watch my previous videos. I have given you a lot more detail on how to spell. Now, every letter, every word that I'm going to put on the self-test is going to construct of either the syllables in those words are going to be constructed of a letter, a consonant, its equivalent vowel, sometimes a Sagheera vowel, or sometimes the tanween, and that's how you will, and then you will combine those spellings just like I did for dhalika. You will combine it to spell the word, and that's how you will know that you've mastered that skill. So next we have, I'm going to do this one a little bit faster. The first syllable is ghain kasra ghi, shin fatha alif saghira sha, ghisha, waaw fatha wa, ghishawa, ta dhammatan tun, غشاوة. Okay, so ghain kasra we've covered, shin fatha and alif saghira we've covered in today's lesson, waaw fatha we've covered, ta and tanween al-dhamm or dhammatan we've covered, and when you combine all of these, it becomes غشاوة, and we've been covering how to spell things out. So this is nothing new. We've covered it all. No need to worry. We are going to move on to the third letter. This is mim fatha alif saghira ma, lam kasra li, mali, kaf kasra ki, maliki. Next we have hamza kasra ya saghira I, lam fatha alif saghira la, ila, fa kasra fi, ilafi. So notice in this word, the first syllable contained a saghira letter, which is Ya Sagheera. So hamza kasra Ya Sagheera, it became E. And then the second syllable also contained a saghira letter, which is lam fatha alif saghira la. So we combine those to make ila, and then fa kasra fi, ilafi. So you will come across a bunch of these combinations in the self-test. The self-test is obviously available for you to take. You can cheat and actually do the self-test before you take the self-test. But that's the good part, that if you take the self-test before actually taking the self-test, you will have a lot of practice and you will get this skill down. Next we have ba kasra bi, ha kasra ya saghira hi, bihi. The next word is ta dhammatu, ra fatha alif saghira ra, ترى با فتحتان بن ترابا. Next, Ya fatha ya, Ra fatha ra, Ha damma Waaw Sagheera hu, Yarahu. Next word, Sin fatha sa, Lam fatha Alif Sagheera la, Sala, Mim damma tan mun, Salamun. Next word, Kaf kasra ki, Ta fatha Alif Sagheera ta, Kita, Ba fathatan ban, Kitaban. So the letters that we did today were ذلك غشاوة مالك إيلاف به ترابا يراه سلام كتابا. So all these words will be written out for you in the self-test, and the tester will present to you the word, and you will be required to deconstruct the word first, syllable by syllable, then combine the syllables, and then combine multiple syllables to make the word, and that's how you will get the points. We've done all of it. We have done fathatan, we have done tanween, we have done fatha damma kasra, we've done spelling, we've done saghira letters, but now it's time to combine all of these so that you can start to recite and actually read the Quran a little bit in a lot more detail. We in the previous lesson we started to learn just to use fatha, damma, kasra, and tanween, but now we've added a fourth one. We've added the saghira letters, and the self-test is going to contain fatha, damma, kasra, tanween, and the saghira letters, inshallah. Okay, so in conclusion, what did we learn today? We learned the three Sagheera letters, or the Sagheera vowels, which were Alif Sagheera, Waaw Sagheera, Yaa Sagheera. And whenever Alif Sagheera is followed by a fatha, the fatha has to be, or the fatha is followed by an Alif Sagheera, the fatha has to be pronounced equivalent to two movements. When a damma letter, a madmuma letter, is followed by a Waaw Sagheera, that the damma has to be pronounced equivalent to two movements, and when a kasra letter is followed by a Ya Sagheera, then the kasra has to be pronounced equivalent to two movements. Maksura letter followed by a Ya Sagheera has to be pronounced with two movements. In the next lesson, we're going to be starting to go into the mad, or what is meant by mad, or elongation. I will give you a quick overview of what mad is, and a little bit of overview on elongation, and now you will start to get into the good parts. Mad, if you learn your ahkam al-mudud and how to elongate letters and how to elongate correctly, your recitation will become beautiful. Now, remember this, because one of my teachers informed me that there are two things that will make your recitation beautiful. If you perfect those two, your recitation will become beautiful. And one of those two things that he told me was the ahkam al-madud, or elongation, the rules related to elongation. In the self-test, you will be required to, just like I showed you in the previous practice slide, you will be required to spell each word, you will be required to pronounce each word with the movements and the saghira vowels, and that's going to be on your practice, on your self-test. The self-test is going to be given to you ahead of time, so I expect a reasonable score. I expect 80% at least in order to be proficient. 90% or better is what you should be aiming for, but anything lower than 80%, I'm going to say you should revise the lesson. And if you don't know what I mean by all of this, or what I mean by self-test, go watch the introductory video. The introductory video is also in my lesson. And finally, if you found this video helpful, go ahead, please like it. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them below. Go ahead, subscribe to this video so that you can see more videos like this one. And if you think your friends or family might benefit, go ahead, share it with them. Jazakallah khair for watching. I will see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.